must say that your background is one of the most sophisticated looking Zoom backgrounds that we've had so far with the books.
Well, there's certainly enough stuff. Yeah. Here, I'll give you a better view. There's my my crystal ball. It's actual crystal. Here's my first. This is one of the first sculptures I ever made. And then there's all the books, and yes, it's this is our library.
Well, it looks very nice, and definitely, I feel like I've got to step up my background game for future episodes.
Yours is nice, minimal.
Very minimal.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I mean, this will definitely be something that you hear all the time because, obviously it's been a while since you released this song, and it's one of your biggest, if not your biggest hits. But I just want to say that what drew me into your music was obviously, like for many people, the song Luka. I just think it's one of the most brilliant songs that's ever been written and recorded in pop music. I just love it so much. Just the melody, everything about it, the chords. And it's one of those songs I never get tired of listening to. But do you get tired of listening to it? And do you get tired of Luka and Tom's Diner being such evergreen kind of hits, or do you just kind of appreciate them for what they are?
I never get tired of them. I always sing them with my whole heart, and especially Luka, I know what it means to people. I know that people have traveled, sometimes they travel a long distance just to hear that song because it tells their story. I've seen many people all over the world who tells the minute they say, I came to see you because of that song, I know exactly what they mean, and they don't even have to say any more than that. So I always sing it with my whole heart, and I never get tired of it.
Well,
and Tom's Diner, I still love because it used to be a small, introverted song about feeling alone at a diner and having an emotional memory, and then kind of leaving it behind and getting on with your day. A small song, but now it's this joyful, crazy dance song that everybody wants to dance to, and so they do. They get up and they dance, they sing along, they sing not just the da-da-da-das, but all the rest of it, and they have, do hand movements to show me what to act out the lyrics. It's great. I really love it.
Because that song was originally a cappella, wasn't it?
Yeah, a cappella, very small, but it always worked. Even in front of huge crowds, I could sing it a cappella, and everyone would listen. It was remarkably effective.
And you studied like English literature, and your lyrics are so brilliant. I mean, like Luka, just as a lyric, I don't know what it, just something about it. Like, do you remember writing that?
Sure. It was a difficult topic to write about because I didn't want to write, child abuse is bad. I didn't want to write something that had a message in it, but I wanted people to know the situation of the child, which is that you can't talk about it. And so I had to kind of figure out how to set it up. And so that's what I did. And when I wrote those first words, my name is Luka, I live on the second floor, I live upstairs from you, then it all kind of clicked. And I thought, oh, this is the way to do that. This is the right way. It's almost like a math problem. It's like if I can get the positions correct of the child and the neighbor and the relationship between them and get the language right, it would just kind of pop into being. And that's exactly what happened. That song probably took me about 2 hours to write, even though it had taken me months of thinking about it, how to set it up.
And what made you want to write about that? Yeah, I mean, it's such a difficult thing to write about, and it was it's so delicate to do it. And you really just did it in a way that's kind of subtle, but really meaningful, and the way you married it to the melody and the chords. I don't know, it's very emotional, but without being at all saccharine.
Yeah. Well, that's also what I wanted. I didn't want to write it in a minor key and have it be sad or have it be introspective, or I wanted it to have a kind of matter of fact major key feeling to it. The production ended up making it sound joyful or almost triumphant, which that was not really my intention, but my manager had said he thought it could be a big hit. So he said if he could do the right production on it, that it could go to radio. So I said, yeah, okay, whatever. I didn't think so myself, but I told him to do whatever he wanted with the production, and they did. So, so the production ended up differently than I thought it might, but I liked it well enough. I wanted to write about it because it's part of life, and I had been listening to a lot of Lou Reed, and I liked the way he could sort of approach writing about these things that were part of life that most people didn't think of putting into a song. So,
and you mentioned Lou Reed. Is he a big inspiration to you? And because I mean, people have compared you to Lou Reed and compared you to Bob Dylan, and were these the type of artists that made you want to get into music? If you kind of trace it back.
Yeah, I love both of those artists, especially Lou Reed in the beginning. I saw him perform, and then I sort of became obsessed with him and kept going to see him live, and saw him probably for 7 years before I actually met him. Over the years, I wouldn't say I kept up with everything that he did, but he was sort of like my North Star of artistry. Because of his bluntness and he's not a guy who would use metaphor. I'm very prone to using metaphors. I like them. To me, they kind of expand your world. But he was not someone who did that. He basically bluntly put down whatever it was he was thinking and feeling. And I felt like my writing could use a bit more of that. So I would listen to him when I wanted more of that. And Bob Dylan, I just think Bob Dylan's just a brilliant guy.
How come you felt kind of compelled to write with more metaphor, as opposed to being blunt like Lou Reed? And how come you needed, or how come you thought it was a good thing to draw from that kind of like blunt inspiration?
I think in metaphors, and I feel in metaphor, and I think some people are just like that. They say some people think in pictures, and I'm one of those people who do that. In conversations with my parents, if they asked me what I was feeling, I was more likely to tell them a color, or I just saw things differently. So when I get an idea for a song, I tend to have an image in my mind. So I try to explain or show what the image is. A song like The Queen and the Soldier, I just saw it very clearly in my mind's eye. And then I found the language to go with the image. And I've always been that way. But I realized that not everybody is that way. And not everybody understands that. One time I had a journalist, these two Italian journalists were asking me, why did I write Small Blue Thing? Why did I lie? I am not a small blue thing. Why did I, and they called it lying. And I'm like, no, I wasn't lying. I was saying that this was my feeling. Today I am a small blue thing because that was my feeling, but they didn't like it and they wanted to argue with me about it, so I get it. Not everybody sees things the way I do.
That's a strange thing to ask. So yeah. Going to the the kind of like playing side of it, because it's kind of easy to focus on your lyrics, particularly because you know, you're obviously kind of passionate about literature, but you know, the playing side of it and your gift for melodies, like, you know, when did you first start playing? How
I picked up the guitar when I was 11. And started fooling around with it, and had to work really hard at it. You know, I'm not a person who can read music, but I can. There's these little pictures that they show you, so they show you where to put your fingers on the fretboard. So that's what I learned from, and I had my stepfather and my uncles taught me various chords, and I sort of worked out my own system, and then I started writing songs when I was 14.
Wow, that's pretty early. I mean, there probably are people who started earlier than that for sure, but I mean, that's still pretty early. And so is that tab where they, you know, guitar tab where they've got the numbers?
Little pictures.
Yeah,
it's like literal pictures, like little.
Oh right, okay.
Tablature. Yeah, tab. I guess that's what you call it. Tablature. Yeah. So it's not just where they have the A minor. They literally show you where you put your fingers on the fretboard, and that's what I use. That's the system I use.
And then so you learned that way, and did you learn playing along to records and stuff as well, or did you just go straight into writing songs?
I never learned to play along with any records. I could vaguely make out whatever it was that I was studying. I found a book called Pop Songs from the 60s or something, and they had a lot of cool jazzy chords. So I took some of those and mixed them with the straight A's and the straight E's and G. And so I found I could tell a little story with the music by mixing in these other jazzier chords that are augmented or diminished or whatever they are. So that's what I did.
And from that point, you know, when did you start taking music more seriously? Was it when you were at college?
Well, here's the thing. Ever since I was little, I tried taking music classes. And I tried, I would say 7 times from the ages of 7 years old to probably 27. And the last time I tried to take music lessons, had a million album. I'm done trying to learn how to read music because I have this and it works. And so what I would is hire people to do the and do the copywriting thing. That just seemed to work better. So anytime I took it seriously and tried to actually learn it, I failed. And that's the truth.
But you must have started, you know, kind of performing and you know, that there was a stage where before you got signed and, you know, made your first record.
Yeah. So that's what you mean. You mean, when did I start taking performing seriously?
Yeah.
So when I was 14, I started writing songs. And by the time I was 16, I had maybe 75 or 50 songs, maybe 50 songs. So I went out and started to play wherever I could get a gig, which was not a lot of places. I've got gigs at like a church basement coffee house, and then I would go down and audition for clubs in the village. So I spent years doing that, and it really was, I think 1980, when I was 20 years old, that's when I went to Folk City, and I think that's when everything got more serious.
And what made you want to become a professional musician? Did you want to be, you know, a star? Did you just want to write great stuff? Did you think you'd like performing?
Right. I wanted. Well, let's see. When I was in my teenage years, I went to the High School of Performing Arts in the dance department, and I thought, you know, if I can't make it as a dancer, maybe I could make it as a songwriter. So I didn't make it as a dancer. And so I started to think, well, maybe I have a gift for songs. And I was getting a pretty good response much of the time when I would go out and sing. So I decided to put my energy and attention behind that. It took a while for me to learn how to like performing as a songwriter, because I preferred theater and I preferred dancing. But I had to learn how to make a kind of act. I had to learn how to put on an act as a songwriter. And I learned that at Folk City.
And when you recorded your first album, do you think you'd kind of perfected that? Finding your feet and finding your sound?
Perfected that? No, not by a long shot. It took so long. I had all these songs, and I finally learned how to perform them live. But being in the studio was a whole other thing. So I had to learn how to give direction, because I had these two producers and they had never produced before. I worked with Lenny Kaye and Steve Adabo. And so they would ask me, like, how did I hear things? And I had to begin to develop a vocabulary to talk to them, which I found difficult. I would say the first album, I had some criticism of it because it sounded so soft. I probably wouldn't have used as much reverb on my vocals and that kind of thing. I learned a lot more as I went along. So I have some reservations about the first album. The second album I thought was better in terms of the production.
Well, I mean, the second album was absolutely amazing. But I mean, I love the first as well. When you got into the early 90s, like it's quite different sound that you started going for, particularly on 99.9. Like what was the reason for changing it up?
Mitchell Froom was a very experienced producer, so that was the first time I'd ever actually worked with a producer who had done a lifetime of experience. And I loved what we did together. He had certain ideas. He said, your voice is very small, so I think we should keep it very dry and keep it right at the center of things, and move everything else around it. So he had very specific ideas of how he wanted to work. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought this was finally... Sorry. Motorcycle going by. I thought, this is finally the edginess that I was hoping to have from the beginning, but never knew how to ask for it, or never knew what the vocabulary was. Stop it, you bad girl! Sorry, my dog is now asking. She wants something. Molly, say hi.
Hi, Molly.
Hi. Say hi.
Oh, such a sweet dog.
Yeah, she's very sweet. She's very needy of something. Silly girl. All right. And Nine Objects of Desire, like, is for some people, your best album. I mean, definitely a lot of your fans would probably say that. How were you able to keep so consistent? Like, because it's over quite a long space of time. It almost feels like quite considered. Like, it's every few years you released an album, and you really, it seems like a lot of thought is put into your records when you make them, and it's not like you had kind of one spell where everything happened right at the beginning and that was it. Like, it really seems like you try and keep consistent and considered. And how are you able to achieve that longevity? Well, it's even more than that. There's a huge backlog of ideas, melodies, thoughts, themes, chord changes, and so every time I make an album, I sort of tap into that huge backlog. So everything's been sort of marinating for a long time. That's the way I see it. And if I don't like something at one time, I can reuse it for something else. And so that's my answer, is that I've never, and it takes so long for me to write something. I have to kind of squeeze it out. So I still have very high standards for myself. I still have the high standards that I did when I was younger.
And do you work at it? You know, like some people describe songwriting as like, you know, these are just gifts that kind of fall from the sky, and they sort of describe it that way. And you know, fair enough if it's like kind of Richards or Paul McCartney dreaming something in the middle of the night and then waking up and putting it on a tape recorder or something. You know, that sounds realistic, but at the same time, you know, is that the same? Is that how it happens for you, or do you work at it? Do you songwrite every day? Like, what does the process look like for you?
Yeah, I don't songwrite every day, but I try to write constantly in my journals. And if I do have an idea for a song, I record it on my iPhone. So it's a combination of both. You work and you work and you work and you work, and then suddenly you get like this great idea, and then it takes 2 hours, and it's like, wow. And then you work again at it. So it's really a combination of working like crazy at it, like a crossword puzzle. You know, you have your rhyme scheme and your rhythms and your consonants that are kind of linked together in some way. And you kind of play with it. And so that you work at it that way. And then if you're really in the flow of it, suddenly you get like a great burst of this wonderful flow. And then you think, and then it seems to write itself. And then you're just like, wow. And then you end up at the end of it, you can look back on it and go, oh, I wrote that. But that's if you're having a really great day.
And what was the, can you think as to what was the time when you were songwriting that you kind of got on a roll to such an extent that you know, that it was like the best time that you can remember songwriting? Do you remember like which song was it where you kind of felt, oh my God, this is going to be really good when we cut this song? Or was there not like one song that kind of comes to mind?
Well, there is a song that comes to mind, which is this: "The Queen and the Soldier" has always been a very mysterious song, even for me. And people ask me, what's it about? Or what did you mean to say by that song? And the fact is, I don't really know. It was kind of like a dream that I had. You know, the idea of this queen in this castle sort of kept recurring to me over a series of months. And I kept sort of fiddling with it. And then one night, the whole thing seemed to happen in front of my eyes like a film. And it happened just the way it is in the song. And I don't know the answer. I don't know why the queen kills the soldier. I mean, she does it in some kind of self-defense, but I couldn't tell you what I was trying to say. But I remember when I woke up thinking, oh, this is pretty good. My friends will like it down at in the village. I didn't think it was going to become like a worldwide thing that people would talk about, you know. But that is the song that most people ask me about. Ask me, what does it mean? And it's as mysterious to me as it is to anyone else.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a brilliant song, and it's quite funny that it's like from your first record that you remember kind of particularly thinking that would be a good song when songwriting. Because I was almost expecting you to say that it would be something from a later album. But yeah, I mean,
later.
Yeah, just because maybe you'd have kind of remembered that feeling, you know, during the songwriting process, like a bit like fresher. You know.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but it's that one really stands out because I remember those hours in the middle of the night when it all seemed to take off. As I've gotten older and I have more responsibilities now, I really have to fight for those times to, you know, even just talking to you right now, I've had the dog came in, I've had other calls coming in, and, you know, my cat is making noises, and, you know, it's kind of hard to get a dedicated space of time where it's just,
Yeah.
me and the guitar, or, my life is a little more crowded now than it used to be, but I still find times to write, and I still love it as a process. It's great.
Yeah, so does it, because obviously when music becomes something that's a profession and you have to do um, various commitments around it and the promotion and stuff like this, and it's it must be really different to that initial joy that you found in listening to music, in creating music, and doing it for music's sake. And do you find it a struggle sometimes? I mean, obviously now the situation's different. You're about to do some live streamed shows for your new album, right?
Yeah.
Um, do you ever find moments where you're like music'd out and stuff from doing it as a profession, or is your is your love of it always undiminished?
My love of performing it is pretty undiminished. I mean, I love touring and I love performing live. But I don't love rehearsing so much. And I'm not a person who sits around practicing every day. But if you give me an audience and a stage, I'm thrilled. And especially the traveling to get there is something I've always loved. I love being in a moving vehicle because I think it's just, there's all kinds of possibilities open when you're in a train or a bus or a car, or, you're going somewhere, something's going to happen. It's a lovely feeling. So I like that.
That's really cool. That's a really nice way of putting it, because actually you hear a lot of artists in the pop and the rock and roll business kind of saying, "Oh, like, I love the shows, but the traveling's a real bore." And to be honest with you, I often think like I'd kind of like to travel as much as you are. And I'd love to be in a moving vehicle, and like it sounds so exciting. I mean, I do sympathize that it's pretty grueling. Yeah. It's not all that it's cracked up to be at some stages, but it's awesome that you've got that outlet.
Yeah,
for sure. And I could tell that you love performing from because it had been a while when I saw this since I'd listened to your records, but I saw your performance on Tiny Desk, NPR Tiny Desk. Which I think is such a great show and such a great format for artists. Did you enjoy doing that?
I did. The funny thing is that I was only told about it probably 20 minutes before we went to do it, and I couldn't figure out what we were doing. They were like, "Yeah, we're going to stop by this guy's office, and you're going to do this performance." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And it's called Tiny Desk, and I'm like, "And is there really a tiny desk?" I just didn't. I wasn't prepared. So I ran into the bathroom, put some lipstick on, and then came out and saw this whole crowd waiting. And we kind of did it like pulling rabbits out of a hat, but just on the way to the gig, on the way to the sound check. So it was very funny, and it had this huge reach. I mean, my daughter wrote to me going, "Oh, I love Tiny Desk." And I'm like, "Really?" I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, it's a really cool series because it just of the variety and just the way that it's so authentic. They don't let people go on it. Even if their records are super produced and stuff, like even if they process their vocals and they auto tune their vocals, they don't. Did you use a mic? I'm not even sure whether some people are allowed mics and stuff on it. It's a really cool idea.
We had a mic actually, and I think I was happy that my voice carried, because my voice is pretty small, but I think Jerry had a little tiny amp for his guitar and his effects, but I don't think I had a mic.
Yeah, because it's all kind of acoustic or natural. I mean, not necessarily acoustic without using amps or anything like that, but it's all just kind of like quiet and natural. And I don't know, it's just really, yeah. I thought it was a brilliant performance, and it was nice because I was checking out a bunch of bands who I hadn't heard before, and then suddenly you came up next, and yeah, it was great to hear the songs in that setting. So my final questions are just about your new album. For those listeners of mine who haven't heard about it or listened to it yet, it's called An Evening of New York Songs and Stories, and just tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, it's a live album from when I played at the Cafe Carlisle last year. It's a lot of songs that I have that are either take place in New York City or about New York City or mention New York City or about leaving New York City and coming back. I tell little stories in between the songs just so people know something about it. The Cafe Carlisle is not just a little cafe, but it's a hotel. So they have guests, and I thought it would be a good idea to do some New York-based songs for the guests in the hotel, as well as the locals, so people who would just like to come to the Cafe Carlo because they live in the neighborhood. So it worked really well, and we boiled down the best of 3 nights, and there it is.
And
it comes out today.
And you're live streaming some shows from New York. Where are you live streaming from?
From the Blue Note, which is down on it's down in the Village. It's like a jazz club. So we're going to be live streaming from there. We thought it would be a good idea because some of the songs are kind of jazzy, and I just thought it would be cool.
Will this be your first live stream since the pandemic?
I did 2. I've done 3 from my home.
Oh, wow.
I did one in June that was a benefit for the Health and Hospitals organization. I did one on my birthday just to say hi, and I sang a few songs. And then I did one in August that was where I did the Greenwich Village Folk Festival. So I've gotten very used to singing from here, from my library. But this is not going to be like that. This is actually a whole show from a venue. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
It's a different thing than what I've done so far.
So it's kind of like the first like produced or like venue based.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah, venue based full show, not just 3 songs, 5 songs, but like with the guys, with my band.
And
Jerry.
You must be really looking forward to kind of gigging like properly, as it were. Have you been missing it over the last few months?
Yeah, I have been. Yeah, I have been. This is probably one of the longest times I've stayed home in a long time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
And so, well, Suzanne, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This series is called Greatest Music of All Time. So I just want to ask for a couple of suggestions from you as to, who your greatest of all time would be if you were kind of forced to name a few names.
Okay, a few names. Well, there's a couple that we've already talked about. One is Lou Reed, and my favorite is the Berlin album. It's you can't listen to it every day, but it's definitely worth listening to at least once or twice in your life. Another one that comes to mind, which I haven't talked about much, is Kate Bush, Hounds of Love, which I just think she's such a brilliant artist. She's really able to talk about concepts and characters and ideas, and I love that about her. So let's put that in there. Let's see who else. Leonard Cohen's first album. Bob Dylan, we could say probably Blonde on Blonde. Laura Nyro, Eli and the 13th Confession.
Oh yeah.
So that's a bunch right there.
That's a great list. Laura Nyro as well.
Yeah,
sometimes not discussed as often as she should be. I found out about her on an episode of Spectacle hosted by Elvis Costello.
Yeah.
Talking about her, but she's definitely worth checking out. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for doing this.
Okay, thank you so much, and same to you. Stay safe, stay well.
Thanks. You. Take care. Bye.
Okay.